Bob here from Hot Track RC. Today we're going to finish up the electronics on the RC10 4-wheel drive, and then we're going to get it over to the carpet track at Nor-Cal Hobbies in San Jose. So stick around! The most important thing we can do to get this buggy ready to go to the carpet track is to get the right tires on it. So we're going to go with JConcepts Sirens on the back, pink compound. And then on the front, we're going to go with Fuzz Bites, also pink compound by JConcepts. That's what a lot of the guys at the track run, especially on four-wheel drives. Those are the wide fronts. So we'll see how that does. But of course, once you put more traction on the car, you get traction roll. So the next thing we want to do is get the ride height as low as possible. We'll use this ProTech ride height gauge. This has got the 15 to 45 millimeter range on it. And most of these gold pans, they sit about 23 millimeters. With a little work, you can get them lower, close to 20. I'd love to get it down to 18. I think that would require going to different springs. And then you start sacrificing your performance off of jumps. So we'll see how low we can get it and what the best compromise is. But before we do all that, we got to wire this bad boy up. So let's get at it. We're going with the Hobbywing XR10 Stock Spec ESC Brushless. I like these. They're reasonably priced. They do what I need to do. They're well engineered. I've never had a problem with them. They do not come with the sensor cable, so you'll have to get that on your own. Plug it into the port, and we'll put the capacitor on the side and just double side tape that on there, and then that won't be flopping around. Get some servo tape on the bottom, and we're going to mount this as far away from the belt as we can. Right up against that chassis stiffener is going to be perfect. And then I'm going to route the wires through the hole in the shock tower. Normally, I don't like to do that if I'm hardwired to the motor, because if I break a shock tower, I got to desolder the motor wires. But in this case, we want to keep everything safely away from that belt, and I think this is the best option. Battery wires running forward. I'm about to make a mistake here on the motor wires. You should always move your motor to the position that it would be in with the largest size pinion that you're going to run. That will rotate it back as far as you're going to need to go, and that way your wires will be long enough to reach in any potential position. I didn't do that. I'm set up for the 20-tooth pinion. So I may regret that because I'm cutting these just really long enough for that. Now, there is a little bit of slack there, but the trick to soldering to these lugs is fixing your wire in place with some type of fixture. Mine is not a great one, but it does the job and makes it quite easy for me to just take my time on these lugs. Now I will pop this sensor cable into place on the motor. I think this was 150 millimeter. If I did it again, I'd probably go with a 175. Now I'm going to cut the battery wires, and I'm going to make the negative side just long enough to get to the bullet on that side so I can't have opposite polarity, and tin those bullets up and fixture my wire, and then just feed that solder in. I love it when it starts flowing. I made this battery fixture out of wood, and it's served me well. And we're going to go with the shark fin style fly sky receiver because that's what I'm running. And I'm going to do a quick bind operation here, which is pretty easy with these. We're just going to go into bind set, leave it on classic, start bind, fire up the ESC, and it binds just immediately. But it doesn't have a switch on the receiver. You have to use the bind plug. So now that fired right up, and we'll shut it back down, pull out the bind cable before we proceed. You get one of these plugs with every receiver, so I've built up a little bit of a stockpile. And now I've got the receiver mounted in the back of the chassis, and I've rolled up all my extra wire. I'm not going to bother to chop those down and put new connectors on there, but I think that looks pretty good. And the motor wiring looks good. So let's do a little bench test here. Servo looks good. All right, all four wheels are spinning. Front wheels are turning. Make sure you set your end-point adjustment. Now, is the belt going to hit itself? Well, it's flapping around a little bit, but I don't see it actually contacting. I don't know what will happen under load, but it looks good. You'll have to reduce your steering travel or you'll be pinning your servo against the end stop, so be careful about that. This servo seems plenty fast. So far, so good on that. This is my first experience with the Eco Power. All right, let's check the ride height. This is just a rough test. I still have the stock tires. That's quite high. We're at 31 in the front. And let's see what we're going to be at the back. I'll lock it. Yeah, just over 30. So that's going to be too high for the carpet. It would be okay for dirt. So I'm going to raise up these shock collars in the back. But what do I do in the front? It's already all the way up, and everything's adjusted to the lowest setting. So I'm going to have to change springs. I kind of like these blue. Some people have said, not so much, but I didn't mind. I'm going to have to go to the silver fronts, though. And I noticed the blue are a little longer than the standard springs, which was kind of nice, but now I'm going to have to go back to the ones that are a little too short. That's the way they are in the team car. They're a little short. You just adjust the shock collar down, but we'll get the range that we need. So we'll put that lower screw in the outer position again, and then we'll adjust the shock collar down to where it just starts to contact the spring, and that'll be our lowest ride height without the spring getting loose. So now everything's loosened up, and we'll recheck, and now we're down to 25. Now this is with the stock tires, and these are a little larger diameter. That's 25 in the back. So that's as much as I'm going to do right now. A little bounce in the back there. That could be the bounce off the tires. I'm not sure. But we'll check that out more later. Okay, so tires and wheels. Okay, so we're going with the mono JConcepts RC10 wheels and the standard four-wheel drive B74 front wheels. These have the deep dish in the back like the originals did for the gold pans, but the fronts are modern wheels and they don't have that dish on the inside. Rears are pin drive, fronts are hex. Okay, there's our Fuzz Bite tires and the Sirens in the back. Nice little pin style. And we'll wipe down the beads with a little cleaner. Get that mold release agent off of there before we glue them. And now wrap those foams up, kind of fold them and work them in. This takes a little time to distribute the foam around the tire so that it sits evenly in there. So take your time, get it worked all the way in there. I usually put my compound marker on the inside of the wheel just for looks basically. So that's the way I've got it here. And just take your time working that bead into place. Try to keep the foam from getting under there. Make sure it's fully seated and work it around. Now we'll run it in a little, distribute that foam, and that looks good. And the fronts go the same way. Foam's fairly large. Maybe you could cut the foam down. I'm just going to use it as is. Now the fronts are unidirectional patterns. So that means we got to pay attention to what we're doing here. The first one could go on either way, and I'm going to put the compound marker on the inside like I always do and work it all in. But the second one's going to have to be backwards in order for the tread patterns to work out correctly. So here we'll line them up. I just have to make sure I don't do something stupid. And so I'll turn the wheel around the other way, have the treads go in the same direction, and yes, that compound mark's going to be on the outside on this tire. And work it on in, and then we should be good to go. We need to glue these. I'm going to use ProTech tire glue with a little syringe tip. Those are 1-Up Racing tips. And I like those better than the plastic ones that come with the glue. They just tend to bend and kind of create problems. So I may not use quite enough glue, but I don't like it oozing out. So I've never had an issue with separation, but maybe the tire is bending more than it would if it had more glue at the sidewall. So choose your approach there. But I'll put my tire band on here now, get it all even all the way around. No one wants a lumpy tire. So hopefully those will dry nice and true. And I got my first side done on the fronts, and I'll do the back side here. I appreciate the performance of modern wheels, but I kind of miss the three-piece designs. And, it seems like it would be nice for racing not to have to keep buying more wheels, but hey, you can't argue with the lightweight and the stiffness and all of that. So let's get this band on the front here. We'll let everything dry. I got a little bit of glue despite my best intentions on the sidewall. So I'll wipe that all off and set everything aside. Come back to that in a while. Did I mention that we need to paint up a body? Because we do. And I'm going to start with my reamer here on the top of the shock tower cutout. This way I don't have to try to do some crazy corner with the scissors, and it'll be a nice smooth corner and maybe not break as easily. And now I just cut right up to the side of that diameter, and everything will be magically done. I'm going box art on this one, and actually I've never done a camel yellow box art body for an RC10. So it's high time to do that, and it's interesting that it's on a four-wheel drive car, but first time for everything. So we'll just power through cutting this out. Now there's going to be several places that we need to do additional cutting due to the differences on the four-wheel drive car. And this body is cut out for the Classic. This is not a unique or special body for the four-wheel drive car. Four-wheel drive car has additional provisions, especially around the front shock tower, that are going to need modification. I don't really see that as so much of a concern. You just take your time and line everything up, and we'll work all of that out. Now, the wing is a team car wing, or of that vintage. So this is not the wing that would have come with that body, that ProTech body. But I like this wing, and I would prefer this to the original wing. It's more functional, looks cool. So, and of course, this is a fantasy car that never existed, at least not in a factory issue, so they can do anything they want. And now I'm just going to get the leading edges parallel, so everything looks nice. And all right, so you're going to have to cut a lot out here for that gear housing cover. Not a big deal, but also your camber link. You're going to need to radius that back on the body and create some space there. You're going to need to notch out around the front shock tower on the body. And in the center there, the body will sit down on top of that in the shock tower in the middle there. And you're going to need to relieve, all the cars need a little more relief around the turnbuckle ends on the body. That's pretty typical. So let's see what it looks like here. That's what that relief looks like for the shock tower. And you need a little more relief for the front nose tubes. But, it's all part of the charm of building these cars. And that's the cutout in the back. It's way more than you think it's going to need to be when you start there to get around that gear housing. But when you get it, it all goes on really well. Now, it does touch on the top of the battery keepers on the hardware there. So that's something I'm going to deal with a little later. So here's our wing. I've radiused the front edge. There is a second line you could use to cut the wing lower if you want less downforce. Now that the glue's dry, we can switch out the tires. There's our kit tires next to our carpet track tires. Kit tires are a little larger diameter, particularly in the front. And you'll see this will sit lower now, which is going to help us. And so we've got all four on here. Let's see what our ride height is now. So in the front, now we're quite a bit lower. Now we're all the way down to 20. That might actually be lower than I can get the rear. So let's see what the rear is at. Yeah, the rear is still at 23, 24. So I am going to have to adjust the springs on the front, and I brought those back up, so now it's even. And we'll look at the camber here, and I just have that little comparison gauge. Probably time I get something more sophisticated, but it seems to work. I set it between 1 and 2. And I'll just check the back. Same thing between 1 and 2. Generally not more than 2. Okay, now notice the hole for the front body mount. It's forward. On all the cars, it's forward to where the mark is. Just be aware of that. Okay, let's put the window masks in. These are paper masks, so I don't think you can use the water trick where you put some fluid underneath and float it in. I don't know that I would try that. It seems like it would damage these particular masks, but I managed to get that lined up. I usually line up the top header line first, and then these side pieces aren't as hard, being a little smaller. And then I'm not going to do all the windows in this car. I'm going to paint everything behind the main driver side window black, and I think that's going to look cool. I did all the windows on the J Halsey, but I want to do this one a little different. So now I'm going to create a little bit of a frame around the bottom of the windows that will be black, and then we'll do the roll bars, of course, on the roof. But getting all this tape in here takes a little bit of patience, and you want to get your lines fairly straight, although the stickers will cover some of this. So it's not as critical as I was thinking as I was doing it. I realized a lot of this will get hidden. But nevertheless, I'm lining it all up as best I can. And then, of course, rubbing the edges down is really important. This back section is the hardest. There's this little notch that's just behind the shock tower. And cutting around that is a little bit of a pain. You have to decide where you want your paint lines to go. I'm doing the back, that notch, in black, and then everything up to that notch in body color. And then I'm going to work those edges, try to get everything as smoothed out as possible so I have a nice line there. And then now I just have to mask off everything except the black that I want to spray. I thought about doing the black second, less masking, but then you're spraying a darker color over a lighter color. I could have backed the silver and then done the black, but decided to do the dark color first. Here's some nice Tamiya pinstriping tape. That works pretty well for going around that corner. And I'll just trim up the ends. So now I've got all the masking in, and I've sprayed one coat of black. It's still pretty thin, but that looks good so far. And here it is with 3 coats of black. And we'll start pulling all the extra tape off here. And hopefully we didn't get anything in the wrong place. Here's that masking tape. That comes off real clean, leaves a nice line. And I'll continue on down the sides of the car. All of this will be painted the main body color, which is camel yellow. Make sure your hands are clean and try to avoid as much contact with the inside of the body as you can during this process, because there's no good way to really clean the body now with it being taped up, and you don't want any contaminants or oils or anything getting in here before you put down your final coats. So I use these tweezers so that I can pull without getting my fingers down on the surfaces, and that works pretty well. Okay, of course, we're leaving our window masks in because we want those to be clear. You could smoke them, but I'm just going clear. All right, now this wing has the film on the outside, which is odd to me. I want that top surface to be glossy, not a matte paint. I want it to match the body. So the film is on the wrong side of the wing. I'm not sure why they did it that way. Maybe there's an explanation, or maybe it's just 6 to 1, half dozen the other. I don't know. Anyway, this isn't hard to do, and there's not that much risk of getting overspray on the wrong side because it's all the same color. Probably wouldn't notice that much anyway. So now we'll peel off the film, which is on the side that I want to paint, and that should be nice and clean. Here's our camel yellow, PS19. And I use this little dowel with some double-sided tape to create a holder for the wing so I don't spray paint my hand. Okay, now, while that's all going in the background and drawing, I'm going to cut out some Mylar. This I got from Tap Plastics, and it's not super thick, but I think it'll be acceptable for the carpet track for at least 1 or 2 runs before it wears through. I have it, and I like it because it's clear and it shows off the gold pan. So I'm just cutting it out and working it on here, and then I'll trim it up. I originally discovered this stuff working on pinball machines. You can use it on the play field to protect certain areas, and the factory puts Mylar on most machines as well to give the play field more life. So just take your time and cut it out and peel it off. I'll cut some notches at the corners so that I can fold them over and get them to adhere to the side of the pan. Be aware there is Mylar and there's adhesive-backed Mylar. You want adhesive-backed Mylar, obviously. All right, now I'm going to put a bumper on here to protect the nose piece, and I purposely left the Mylar a little short, but the bumper is going to cover that up and prevent the front edge of the Mylar from peeling, so I really like that. And it looks nice and clean with that bumper on there. Very simple, but it does do its job, and I've never had damage there on the front end using those. So now I'm going to do a little adjustment on the motor timing. The factory, most motors come at 30 degrees. That seems pretty typical. I want to go up to 45 as a starting point. So I'm at 40 there, and now just around, 44 or whatever. So we'll see how that goes, and then we can adjust from there. The front body post is too short on this car, so I'm going to try to put another washer or 2 underneath there, but the screw's only so long. Now, I could go get a longer screw, but I was too lazy at this time. It won't take 2 with the standard screw. I'm going to go with just 1 additional washer. That could cause the screw to pull out, but I didn't have any problem with it. All right, camel yellow is on the body. I had a little bit of black overspray right there. That was just sloppy masking. It wasn't even right next to a mask line. It was just my general masking. So be careful. Don't let any openings occur. Okay, pulling the film off is one of my favorite parts. It comes off easily and looks great. So that is definitely yellow. And the black looks good. So we'll pop our window masks off now. You don't want to do this when the paint is still a little wet because it can cause an area that hasn't fully dried to smear across a window. So let it go for a half hour, 45 minutes at least, and then you can dig into this. But all that pulled really well. It's hard to mask where those grids are on the side windows. I did get a little bit of bleed there, but not bad. Now I'm going to put some Mylar on the inside of the body in a few places. This is for the wing tube screws that are going to cut right through that paint if you don't protect your body. And then also here, the battery hardware for the keepers pushes up against the body in that location. And then in the front, that shock tower rubs in the center, and the body post when you install the body hits under here. So I'm just going to protect this whole area. You could use tape as well, but this Mylar is kind of nice for this purpose. And then we'll cut this hole out and call it good. If I see any other wear marks developing, I'll add more Mylar in those areas. All right, now let's see how this wing came out if the masking worked. Okay, that's what the look I wanted right there. Nice and glossy on the top. It's dull on the sides of the wing, but we're going to put decals there. So that's the way we're going to look here. Now, this kit comes with essentially like the classic decals. And again, they're not specific to the four-wheel drive for the most part. If you put the stripe on before, you know that it has to bend around this contour right here. So a little heat might help you get it to lay flat right there. And then into that relief for the shock tower. but no issues. Then we'll just trim the front and the back of both sides. And then we will move on to the hockey stick. These are a little more challenging. I'm cutting the rear stripe in the center so I can lay it on and leave the ends loose and line everything up, because you have to join the hockey sticks to this stripe across the rear of the car. So now I'm going to kind of set it up here and see how everything looks. Well, that's an unpleasant sound, but hopefully it does the job here. So now I've got to get this to just take off at the right angle and be in the right position with the deck stripe. It's a little fiddly. You gotta work with it a bit here until you get it at the right angle. But then it will lay down and you can get it quite good. And this side came out near perfect. And get that little bubble out there. It's going to lay down right in line. And that heat will cause it almost to fold down and lay flat by itself. And that's the key. Once you get it in that position, if that adhesive is clean and you don't have any oils on there, it should hold. Now we'll just be careful to roll the hockey stripe forward at the right angle, trim it up, and I am very happy with that. You can barely even see the seam there. Okay, the other side has to go through this cutout, so I put the stripe on intact, and then I'll trim it across the gap there. And then we can move on to our front stripe and our Reedy Modifieds logo. That looks really good. Now you're starting to see that classic box art look, but we got to get the number 10 on here. And at the angle, and it's just an eyeball thing, but the zeros are 2 pieces, so take your time on that. The billboards are large, and it's easy to get air bubbles under these, so take your time, start on one edge, and you're going to have to hold it away from the body. It's going to want to jump down and stick on before you're ready, so hold it up at an angle, and you use your finger to work it down, and if you see an air bubble, hold on to the end so you can gently pull it back and release that air before it all sticks down. And then we'll trim the bottom edge and we'll call that one done. Now, the box art shows 2 different versions, one where the 10 is in the front and one where the 10 is in the back. I went with the front version. And we'll get our associated logo down here. And just make sure you know where to start there so you don't have the other end run off the end of the body. And then lay the Reedy Modifieds logo down parallel to that tail. And that looks really good. I like these decals in that they're die cut, but the edges are close to the graphic. So I didn't feel the need to trim them additionally, which is really nice. And I'll put this window netting on here. And yeah, you know, you could do that by hand, but it looks pretty good from any distance. So I am happy with this body. And I'm excited that this is finally the first box art gold pan body I've done in camel yellow. And very happy with the results. Now, the wing is a little bit of an oddity here, though. Obviously, it's different than the original RC10 Classic wing. I like this wing better than the Classic wing, but the graphics were for the Classic, so you don't have the right fin decals. I just happen to have another RC10 decal sheet, number 6312. I had bought this to do a different car, but I didn't use the stripes, so I have extra stripes, which is going to save me, and billboards. So I'm going to need all of those to do this the way it's shown on the box. Now, how come they were able to do it on the box? Well, if you look closely on the box, you can see where they cut all these pieces and put it together because they didn't have the decal either. So, you know, that's a little bit annoying, but just more of a challenge here. And I've seen many different designs that people have done with this car, and you certainly don't have to do this style. But I was determined to get the box art look. So now I am using that metal ruler with an X-Acto knife to trim my lines where I'm at a radius. Otherwise, I can trim right down the side. That looks good. I'm happy with that. So I've got the white on here now, and I'm going to cut the stripe. Now, I need every bit of the stripe that I have, so I had to be very careful here not to waste any. And then this pink is going to stick up a little high over the wing because I need area in the white. If I put it all the way down, I wouldn't have enough white showing. So I move this up, and you can see there's some overlap here, getting that parallel. And that looks good. And then just peel the backing off. Now I'll use my knife. This side's easier because I can trim right around that edge. And then that side will be good. And here we go with the Team Associated. There are 2 versions of the box art. This is the only sticker I had was the Team Associated version, so I'm going with that one. And I'm very happy with that. Now, we have to use the remnants to do inside the wing. And I was very careful to trim the top and the bottom, the pink and the blue, so that all 3 of these pieces line up because the widths of the color bars were not exactly the same. So it took a little fiddling with this to get it right. Okay, but it's lining up well now. And I've got that filled in. So now just to put the final Associated logo on here, and the wing graphics will be done. Thank you very much. This wing took a lot longer than I thought for a few different reasons because I was stubborn and had to do it the way I wanted to do it to copy the box art. If you get creative, you could do things in a much simpler manner. But now we will put the wing buttons in, and using the reamer is the easiest way to do that. Just slowly get to the diameter, and there it is. That's a perfect fit. And we'll pop them in. Don't forget your set screws in the bottom. The wing wire slides right through very easily. This all works well. If you tighten these set screws too much, though, it will warp the wing. So I keep them a little bit on the loose side, and truth be told, that wing's just going to be for the shelf. I don't like these body clips that they give you in the kit, so I'm going with a more modern style on this car. I like to do all the cutting on the body before you paint. That way, when you get to this point, it drops right on. Hopefully, there's no need to do any additional trimming, and you can just enjoy seeing the body on the car for the first time. There goes the wing, and I love that. Now, I know this is a sight we've seen many times before, but I never built one, so I'm very excited. And that means it's time to get to the track. So here we are in the pits at Nor-Cal Hobbies. And we've got power, we've got steering, and I think we're ready to go. I just met Lulu today, but she's given me a lot of encouragement, so let's head out. It's always exciting to head up on the driver's stand for the first time of the day. Now, this really is the very first time I've ever driven this car. And as you'll see, things don't exactly go the way I wanted. And there is something going on with my steering to the right because it is virtually non-existent. Thank you. I need to adjust the steering here. Thank you. So back to the pits we go for a quick endpoint adjustment. I think that's probably all it is. I reduced the steering travel to be more gentle to the CVAs, but that is not going to work. So I'm going max until I just touch the stops. Now I don't want to have my servo doing extra work by burying the steering into the stops, but that's just right at the limit. Okay, let's give it another try here. That seems much better. Now I'm able to actually turn, and that's the first jump, a little nose high there, so I'll have to adjust my style and drive around the wrecks. Up on the wall for the first time, around the corner here, okay. And let's try the tabletop. Nice! Perfect landing. Oh, that little double jump. That thing's tricky. All right, let's see what happened, because it is dead now. Pop the drive shaft out. So the rumors are true. I don't have this blue plate on the inside like has been suggested by others. So definitely that would help more engagement on the drive shaft. So for now, I'm going to move the shock to the outside hole on the lower arm. And that should give me a little more engagement. Front's a little too high now. I think I can get that down. The back's sitting at 22. So I'm going to adjust the front shocks, bring it down a little. Okay, now I've got it here. 22 in the rear and 21, 22 to 23 in the front. I'm going to call that good for now. It's time to put this buggy through its paces. Let's see what it can do. It feels like a gold pan. I would say a little bit heavier, but it jumps well there. Now, I've got that 20-tooth pinion in here, and I could definitely push that further. But look, I'm pushing it around the corner there pretty good. And a little short on the jump. Avoid that double. And that looks good. Let's see how we do here. A little nose high, push it around the corner. Yeah. I think this can take some more cornering abuse here. And now I'm starting to get it. Whipping through that S pretty well. That was a nice landing there. So I'm liking this. I mean, it's fun to drive. Look, this car is never going to beat a B74. And that's not the point. Is it fun to drive? Yes. I'm enjoying this quite a bit. And it feels natural to me because I know how gold pans drive. It's a little different with four-wheel drive, but honestly, a lot of similarity here. So now I'm starting to cook around here and feeling pretty natural. A little bobble on the second double, but no harm, no foul. And once again, down through the S here. I could be pushing this harder, but I'm always trying to avoid rolling these cars. And then, boom, I hit that double again. Well, some suspicions that people have voiced as true about the battery popping out of the keeper here for the Lipo. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. That's the way I found it. It looks like it's still partly closed, but the battery's on top, so probably need some type of upgrade there. But other than that, car's running great. So I keep tightening this up, but this keeps getting loose. Not tight at all. All right, well, we didn't have any more drive shafts pop out. No more dog bones popped out after I moved the point out here on the suspension. Belt is tight. Yeah, okay, the belt's loosened up, so probably need to do some adjustment on that now that it's been run a little bit. Car ran great. One last trip over the tabletop, and then it's time to head back to the ranch. So what did we learn after taking this buggy to the track and putting it through its paces? Well, a full-length chassis stiffener would probably be a nice upgrade. Word on the street is that Factory Works is going to re-release a modified version of something that they've done before with their conversion kits, but it'll be specific to this car, and it'll deal with the area around the nose tubes is congested because of the adjuster for the belt that's right there. So definitely be interested in that. I would say this chassis has sort of reset itself a little bit after driving it, fairly hard at the track. I don't see anything that's bent, but that's the most likely reason that the belt now is a little looser. Now, I think I could adjust it up, get it tighter again, but will it keep changing? Probably. So if they come out with that, I'll definitely be interested. And then they also are talking about doing aluminum pulleys, which is something I called out in the last episode that I'd like to see. They'd be larger diameter. which would require a longer belt, but it would help with skipping of the belt. So I'm interested to check that out. And then, you know, the battery retention, if you're not excited about the setup that the car comes with from the factory, then there's plenty of options out there. Dragon Punch RC has one with carbon fiber top plates and O-ring retention. I did get this one tightened back up, and I think it's usable, but it's a little sloppy. So if I get some of those upgrades, maybe we'll take this back to the track again. Before that, we'll probably be putting electronics in the team car and getting that over to the track. So if that interests you, then we'll see you next time.